trying to do a cool shot. So, welcome back to part 4 of Introduction to Mosasaurs, everybody. I'm Mosasaurus Yorkshire, and today we're going to do part 4 and just see where our Mosasaur journey takes us. So, where were we last time? So, we left off with this big fella up here. Wow, that is a huge lizard. Tylosaurus. Tylosaurus was ruling the world, basically. It ruled the Western Interior Seaway and was the Mosasaur king. Up until around about 72 million years ago, when something very, very strange happened, and Tylosaurus simply wasn't a match for it. So, 72 million years ago was the arrival of this guy, Mosasaurus. But not Mosasaurus like we know of. We actually have to go back a bit to understand where Mosasaurus really came from. Hello, over here. I'm in the family dinner table again. Let's hope they don't kick off this time. So, right now, I'm on the Mosasaurine branch of the Mosasaurs, and this is where Mosasaurus actually comes from. I mean, that's where Mosasaurs and Mosasaurines get their name from. But Mosasaurus, I thought it was obvious. And if you remember from last time, Mosasaurines include the Mosasaurus, Prognathodon, Globidens, Cladastes, a whole host of different little animals there. Well, not really little animals, some could be a bit about as big as us, but anyway. Oh, it's this fella again. I think he's going to try and eat me. So this is Cladastes, that sort of fast-swimming Mosasaurine that I mentioned in the last video. Now, it's a basal member of the Mosasaurines, which possibly means that it's one of the earliest ancestors of Mosasaurus, apart from Dilophosaurus. And these two here, they're having a bit of a spat. This is Jormungandr valhalliensis, which is one of the coolest Mosasaur names ever. Now, these two animals were recently described in a paper, and they seem to be a bit of an intermediate between Cladastes and some of the more derived Mosasaurines, so it's possible that Mosasaurus originated from either Jormungandr or a Jormungandr-like ancestor. So first, a bit of history behind Mosasaurus. And yes, I've taken my hat off, it's quite warm today in the UK. So, first specimen of Mosasaurus halfmani was discovered in Netherlands in a chalk quarry during 1764. And particularly, it was found near an area called Maastricht, which is where the Maastrichtian gets its name from, which is the end period of the age of dinosaurs, the Maastrichtian, before, well, we'll get to that later. And a lot of people were kind of weirded out. What was this thing? At first it was thought to be a giant whale, then it was thought to be a crocodile, until finally we got an idea of what this was. During the early 1800s, two particular paleontological masterminds and legends had their hands in Mosasaurus. These were George Cuvier and William Conybeare. These two actually finally identified that Mosasaurus was a unique fossilized animal and was unique to any of these whales or crocodiles that people thought they were. They were giant lizards, and at the time, some of the people actually thought they were giant land lizards like monitor lizards, but in fact, these were marine animals. But very quickly, Mosasaurus was found not to be restricted to Europe. Over in America, they actually found another species of Mosasaurus called Mosasaurus missouriensis, but that was named a bit later, but there's a whole kerfuffle story about that. But it showed that these marine lizards were all across the world and seemed to be quite dominant because these were very large animals. Some of them could have been up to 40 feet in length. In fact, funny little story, the reason that this one has a separated snout is because they actually were missing the snout for a while, and then, actually these two go together. Great. Now, to my current knowledge, Mosasaurus missouriensis is actually possibly the earliest Mosasaurus species we have on record at the moment, unless we find more, which would be really exciting. It lived around about the same time as other mosasaurs such as Tylosaurus, Prognathodon and Plioplasticapus, and in fact lived with them in the Bear Paw Formation. Now, this was around about 72 million years ago, so you can see why Tylosaurus was getting a bit... There's a new kid on the block. But don't worry, Tylosaurus is only about 5 meters. There was also this fella, Mosasaurus conodon, which lived around about the same time as Mosasaurus missouriensis and possibly is a descendant or maybe a sister species, we really don't know at the moment. But these were both quite lightly built, slender-snouted Mosasaurus species, unlike the heavyweight that would become Mosasaurus halfmani. Now, apart from these slender-snouted, slender-bodied Mosasaurus over in America, you also had the slender-snouted, slender-bodied European Mosasaurus called Mosasaurus lemunneri. Now, Mosasaurus lemunneri had the unfortunate case of actually living alongside Mosasaurus halfmani in Europe, so it was kind of like little brother, big brother situation. This guy would feed on small prey, while his bigger brother would probably eat bigger prey, including his little brother. That must be a really awkward family dinner. Then you also had Mosasaurus bugai, which was actually almost as big as Mosasaurus half-marni, but still quite slender-skulled and slender-bodied, so wasn't really any competition to Mosasaurus half-marni, which it also shared an environment with. And then finally, a few million years before the end of the Cretaceous period, we had the emergence of Mosasaurus half-marni. And compared to the other Mosasaurus species that were in the same genus, this guy was a heavyweight. Now, Mosasaurus missouriensis, as I said earlier, was about 5 meters. Conodon was probably about the same size. Bugai and Lemunneri were probably about maybe 9 to 10 meters. Mosasaurus half-marni could have possibly up to 50 feet. That's 15 meters long. And it was truly built for taking on everything. This tooth right here comes from Mosasaurus bugai, and as you can see, it's quite small and quite slender. Whereas these teeth, which are actually quite broad and quite thick, these are Mosasaurus half-marni teeth. These were built for smashing up and ripping apart giant chunks out of, well, giant marine reptiles, if they can get their jaws on them. So, what happened to the tylosaurs? Even with the emergence of Mosasaurus half-marni, the tylosaurs were still clinging on. In fact, they were clinging on in 3 particular formations across the world. Okay-ish, you could say? So, in the Bear Paw formation, you had actually quite a number of mosasaurs. You had the earliest Mosasaurus, Mosasaurus missouriensis, along with Mosasaurus conodon. You had what I like to call the bruiser mosasaur, Prognathodon, which was smashing up seashells and sea turtles. And of course, you also had Tylosaurus, specifically Tylosaurus saskatchewanensis. And this animal was probably one of the biggest mosasaurs in the area, and this is probably an animal that Mosasaurus missouriensis and conodon stayed away from. Over in Europe, you actually had the emergence of a new tylosaur called Haenosaurus. Specifically, this is Haenosaurus bernardi, about 13 meters in length, and ruled Europe alongside Mosasaurus half-marni. Now, yeah, I know, Tylosaurus, Haenosaurus, they might be interchangeable, but there's a whole long debate about that. And what's interesting, we may have evidence that Mosasaurus and Haenosaurus actually fought each other. There's an endocast of a subadult Mosasaurus that shows what we think could be an impact injury. Now, this could be from actually something falling on it or something ramming into it, like a tylosaur, because tylosaurs have those projections on the end of their snouts, and that's a possible use that these animals were using them for, ramming rivals and prey items. Now, we're not sure if this injury actually killed the Mosasaurus, or whether this was a predatory event or a territorial event, but it's quite interesting to see that these two mega mosasaurs were interacting with each other, possibly. This injury could also just be from another Mosasaurus, but I like to think it's Haenosaurus. It's a lot cooler that way. And of course, Haenosaurus bernardi, alongside living with Mosasaurus half-marni, lived alongside Mosasaurus lemunneri. A couple species of Prognathodon, which seem to be the most speciose mosasaur in this region, and other mosasaurs such as this little crushing mosasaur that was only about 2 meters long, Corinodens, along with Globidens, a larger crushing mosasaur, Plioplatyscarpus, a fast-moving Plioplatyscarpine, and so many others. Now, these areas had a lot of mosasaurs, but the most mosasaurifus, if that is a word, area is definitely Morocco during this period. Morocco was an absolute paradise for mosasaurs. Currently, to my knowledge, there's potentially up to 15 species of mosasaur living here, including this big fella here, Thalassatitan atrox, which used to be a former species of Prognathodon, is actually one of my favourites. In fact, here's a picture that I took out in Morocco in 2019 of 2 Thalassatitan skeletons. At the time, they weren't called Thalassatitan, they were called Prognathodon sp, but wow, these things were huge. They were about as big as a car. Now, of course, we had Mosasaurus bugai, which is the Moroccan species of Mosasaurus, alongside Mosasaurus half-marni. You also have one of the last remaining tylosaurs, Haenosaurus bubka, which was actually named quite recently, and this is a 9-meter long tylosaur that seemed to irk out a living in Morocco around this time with the amount of competition that it had. And this included animals like Corinodens, possibly 1 or 2 species of Prognathodon, the giant halosaurine Pleurodens, the star-toothed mosasaur Stellidens, and the weirdly shark-toothed Xenodens, along with a whole host of other mosasaurs that I haven't got to yet that I will get to another day. So, around this time, the mosasaurs, and specifically Mosasaurus, were pretty much ruling the world, ruling the world's oceans. How could it get any better? Spoiler, it just got a whole lot worse for them. Unfortunately, 66 million years ago, a comet slammed into the Earth around about the Gulf of Mexico and killed off a huge majority of animals, including the mosasaurs. So even though their reign was swift and great, they could not outlast the laws of nature. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and have a good day. See you later.